Hi, I'm Catherine Dyer, and this is my husband,
Carl Zoltan.
and you're listening to
Can't Tell You Everything podcast.
Today we are doing something new.
Yes, we're going to have our first guest. We talked about it, and it's time to do it.
And I'm pretty excited.
I'm real excited, too. It's my
Okay,
sensei.
I'm real excited too.
Yeah, we're both excited. Well, that's why he's our first guest.
We're so excited we're talking over each other.
I know. Okay.
So this is going to be Chris Doe, who is from the online platform The Futur.
Mm-hmm.
And we met him, as we mentioned on our first episode, at a design conference called Epicurrents. And he changed my life. Meeting him changed my life. And I just feel that he has light and wisdom to share that other people can somehow incorporate into their life. And that's the whole idea of our podcast and what we're doing. We want to give you something that you can carry forward with you and somehow incorporate into your life and make it a positive difference for you.
Absolutely. And we talk about connections all the time. And this is a connection that we had and you had that planted a seed and made a difference in our lives. And this is what we talk about. And that's why when we had our first guest, we wanted it to be Chris.
And the seed he planted is this podcast.
Well, yeah, that's
I mean,
true.
we had thought about it,
Mm-hmm.
but he challenged me.
Yeah, talk and doing's two different things.
And you know me, when I'm challenged, I'm saying, okay, I've got to complete this now. There is an official challenge, and it has been recorded.
Yes, you're right.
And I don't want to look like I didn't fulfill the challenge.
No. Well, here we are. So let's see how it...
So I'm just really thankful that he agreed. I know he's a busy guy.
Yes.
I know he's got a lot that he's got going on. And it's very meaningful to both of us that he agreed to be our first guest.
All right, let's get this thing started. We met at Epicurrents. Kathy gave her speech there. And when we went, we didn't know anybody. And she gave her speech, got through that. And then you were nice enough to come up. And we didn't even know you were the main speaker. We didn't know anybody there. But you were so kind and so generous with your time. And you really helped us out a lot. For other people that might not know you that are listening, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. And I'm not sure, for the record, that I was the main speaker either, so that would be news to both of us.
To me, you were the main speaker.
Well, I appreciate that, Carl. My name is Chris Doe. I'm the founder of two companies. One is called Blind, and we had for over 2 decades made commercials and music videos for some of the biggest brands and bands in the world. And the last couple of years, I would say starting around 2014-15, I started a second company called The Futur. It was to fulfill a passion of mine about teaching, and I wanted to find a way to teach on scale. And so now we've created this incredible community around design learning, around teaching creatives the business skills that they need to be able to make money doing what it is that they love.
I was on your show, your podcast.
Yes.
It was a practice. I thought. It went well because, see, look how well the practice went. I'm doing my own. Challenge was completed.
Yes.
And this, so I'm interviewing you. So I have a question. What is a struggle you've experienced in your life that has impacted you going forward?
You just go straight for the jugular, Kathy. No warm-up question.
I go straight for the heart.
The struggle. Okay. Something I've struggled with most of my life, and sometimes it still pops its head up from time to time, is my own discomfort in my own skin. And I grew up as a person who had a hard time finding my own identity, that I was in some instances too light-skinned for a dark-skinned community because we grew up poor. And then as my parents worked and were able to kind of climb the socioeconomic ladder, then my skin became too dark for a more white community. So I've struggled to find who it is that I am, my own community, my own culture. And for a good portion of my adolescence, I was ashamed of being Asian American. I wanted to just fit in. And this wasn't just something that manifested in my own brain. It was something that people in my class, my classmates, and in my community made me constantly aware of. Like, I was called racial slurs just shopping at a supermarket or walking home from school. A few girls across the street would, yeah, yell out derogatory terms at me. I was like, I didn't even know you. Like, what is this about? So when you're a kid, not sure of yourself, introverted and shy, these kinds of signals tell you like you don't belong. And all I wanted to do was belong. And so for a lot of my life, I've been trying to figure out who am I, and to learn to love myself.
Wow.
That was good. Very touching, Chris.
Very touching. Now, with that struggle, you've clearly, I mean, I wouldn't have known any of that because you are very confident now. So you've gained tools along the way that I would guess. But I'm sure a part of that struggle and what you went through to overcome it is a part of your life and manifests itself. And my curious brain wants to know, how do you utilize those lessons and that pain or what you went through in your creative process?
Ooh, that's a super complicated question.
Well, I'll give you an example
Okay.
if this is helpful. So for
Okay.
me, when I was going through cancer, it was devastating. And with photography at that time, if you look a lot of my pictures, they're very kind of almost like have a fantasy feel to them, the angles and kind of how I shot, because I created my own world. You know, I created a place that made me happy and that I thought would make others happy. So for me, that's the way I would say that struggle, informed my work at that time. So even if it's a specific piece of work or what you do at the future, with design therapy and some of the things you do, I see that your heart is in what you do. And I'm thinking some of that came from, maybe not having that person that was that guide for you.
Okay. You sharing that actually helped me understand your question a little bit better, because it's a multi-layered question that you're asking of the things that I did to overcome my own struggles, and then the second part is how have they manifested themselves in my life, right?
Right.
So thanks for sharing that, because that okay, so here's what happens to me. Every year and a half, my family, we moved or we switched schools or something. So setting roots down was not something I was comfortable doing. Literally, I was like about to make this best friend, and we're like really cool with each other. And then my mom would just tell me out of nowhere, "This is the last summer we're here. We're moving to another neighborhood." So after a little while, I learned like I don't want to open my heart to people, because I know this is pre-internet, pre-cell phones, pre-everything. So
Right.
once you move out of the neighborhood, that person might as well be in Africa as far as I was concerned,
Mm-hmm.
a world away. And so I escaped into my imagination. I started to look through magazines and comic books and escape there. And I would pour over every inch of those comics or those magazines. I'll give you a couple of examples. We didn't have a lot of money, nor did I ever feel entitled to ask my mom for money to go and buy comics. But one of my childhood friends, he would give me a stack of comics that his neighbor gave him. And I would just sit there and study the ads, not just the art, but the ads, the inside of the cover, like how they write the creative staff, and just study all of that. And that's where I lived. In the world of magazines, I started to stare at the lives of what I would consider like normal Americans, and how their flooring was laid out, or the curtains or the molding on the wall. I didn't have the vocabulary at that time to understand or describe what that was, but I knew this is not what our house looks like. And so I loved interior design and fashion, and I thought myself peculiar and odd, because boys my age were talking about football or sports or something else, and I didn't care about all that. I was just studying the clothes and the patterns and what color combinations go well together. I didn't yet have an outlet for any of this, so that was going to have to take a back shelf. The other thing was I was very, very uncomfortable speaking English because it's my second language, and so I just kept quiet. And my whole strategy on surviving junior high and high school was just don't make noise so people will bother you. And so I had a lot of time to spend inside my head to reflect on what it is I was thinking.
Mhm.
And later on, I would learn that this is kind of part of the meditative process, even though that's not what I was trying to do. So I got to think a lot about the things that I think about.
Oh,
And the other part too is because of that sense of like never belonging, it's no surprise to me that today what I live for the most is this community that we've created virtually and also in person, that I feel so alive, and my heart fills up with joy when I'm around people that we have shared beliefs and goals and values, and it's so wonderful. And that's when I saw you on stage just pouring your heart out, I can see the authenticity, your vulnerability, and just like digging deep into the soul of who you are and just opening it out for everybody to see. That's what drew me into you. I was like, this is incredible because a lot of people are just not ready to share that.
Uh,
well, and you approaching me and immediately knowing that I had an internal dialogue. You saw that when I said maybe 3 words, and you said, quiet the voices in your head and listen to me. Nobody had ever said that to me. Nobody had ever recognized that. And that was one of the most powerful moments I've had in my whole life.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. That what?
no, no, we appreciate it. Very touching. That's what we
I
try to be
know.
about. That's what it's all about, right? Right, Chris?
Yes, it
Um,
is.
You talked a little bit about vulnerability, and I could relate to that a little bit as a caregiver and not going through this. When we first found out that Kathy had cancer, I went to work and I was a police sergeant at the time. So in the morning, my guys said, "Hey, how did it go?" And I said, "It didn't go well." Then I broke down and started crying. That was like 5 years ago. But anyway, so one of my guys, to make a long story short, started to hug me. And here we are, 2 cops in there, and he's giving me a hug, and me and my team, we're getting through it. And that's what, life's all about. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, was there a moment when you showed vulnerability to your family, coworkers, or the audience, or where you just filled up and just couldn't take it, or something overwhelmed you where you just let it out regardless of where you were at?
Kurt, I'm going to admit to you, I struggle with showing that side of me. And that's why I was really drawn to Kathy. It's like she was in that moment, a person who showed me that it could be done, and there were no adverse consequences to doing this. But in the culture that I grew up with, men don't cry, men do not have feelings, let alone talk about them. Forget about that. You just keep your feelings to yourself. And maybe this is true, maybe it's not, I don't know. But I've always wondered if there were moments of hardship or things I struggled with, if anybody was interested in that. Like, I'm not necessarily looking for anybody to feel sorry for me. So I just don't know if it's interesting. And that's why I've rarely ever talk about things that I struggle with. It's not until moments and when somebody shows me genuine interest, like, hey, talk to me about something that you've had a hard time dealing with, that I share that. I don't just volunteer it.
No, I understand. I understand. And yeah.
You grew up similarly.
Yeah. But sometimes that one and a few, I get more emotional as I get older, I guess, or vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Too. My kids have helped to make me more in touch with my feelings. That's for sure. It's because when I look at them, I don't want there to be any pretense. I want there to be a real connection. And that I also want to show them a different role model, if you will, one that they can see their father, a man who is in charge most of the time, who's got his stuff together most of the time, also has other sides to him, of joy, of sadness, of struggle, of contemplation, so that there's a full spectrum, so they don't have to like close that part off of their emotions and how they think of the world.
Yeah.
Right. I agree.
Me too.
I agree.
All right. What is one piece of advice that you got that would help others? I know this is what you do, but out of life lessons category,
Yes. One piece of advice. I think one of the best pieces of advice came from my business coach who I worked with for over 10 years. His name is Keir McLaren. And we were struggling, not struggling in the way that other people would struggle, but we were struggling to break this glass ceiling. When we were out there bidding for jobs that were over $200,000, our win ratio dropped really fast. It dropped into like 15, 20%. And it was demoralizing. We could not figure out why. Anything under $200,000, we're going to take down. We're winning those at 70, 80%. And he told me to share with him my process for talking to clients on the phone. And I was like, sure, I can do this. I've been doing this for a number of years now. I'm pretty good at this. And I share with him. And then he smiles, and it's still new in our relationship, so he doesn't go full Keir mode on me. And he's like, no wonder you're not winning these jobs. The way that you're conducting yourself, like, how are you supposed to know what the client wants because you've not once asked them what it is that they want?
Mm.
And I thought, that's taboo. Like, you're not supposed to ask people what they want. That makes the whole arts and magic of creativity gone. Like, aren't I supposed to use intuition and design and guide the clients through this? He's like, you can if you want, but that sounds like a gamble to me. Why wouldn't you ask? I'm like, I don't know. I thought the rule was you don't ask, Keir. He goes, I don't know. I give it a shot. So what do I say? He said, just ask him really what you think. So give me an example, Keir. And he does. And he'll say something like, well, I know you have many options to consider when hiring a creative firm. How will you make that decision? And I said, that's it? You just say it like that? That's not crass? It's not too blunt? He goes, I don't know. You could try to use other words, but those words work. So I would do that. And to my shock and surprise, the clients told us what they wanted. And then they would tell us things like, nobody's ever asked us that before. Not in a negative way, but in a way that you're making us think, and you're helping us to process what it is that we want. And you guys must be really good listeners. So almost immediately we went from closing jobs at the 10 to 20% range, which is like 1 out of every 5 to 10 jobs, which is horrible, by the way, to like 60, 70%, just like we were with the lower budget projects. And this gift that he gave me was, if you want something in life, you just have to be brave enough to ask and to risk sounding stupid, because everybody else is running around trying to be something that they're not, and they're not going to ask. And for everybody that listens to your podcast and is watching this later, they're going to say to themselves, it cannot be that simple. And if that's the story you want to tell yourself, you're welcome to it.
Excellent advice.
And actually, that's the same thing I was trying to tell you about the grocery store. It's that simple. You just share something, but it's the opposite. Instead of asking, what do you want? It might be, I like your jacket, or what to a total stranger. It is. I get what you're saying. And you do that with people too. I mean, not just for jobs. You did that with me. I mentioned something, you said, what do you need? And I really appreciated that, because you're right. People don't do that.
And then he connected with you right away and saw your core.
I connected with him right away.
Potato.
We've been talking about vulnerability. Now with you, I know you do public speaking. And I know we've talked about public speaking to big crowds. I mean, 10,000 people. No, I don't know. Big crowds, right?
Not that big, yes.
So you talked about basically being introverted, shy, unsure of yourself. How do you go from that to just owning it? And this is a true personal question for me, because that speech I gave, I keep thinking it was a fluke. It was just a conversation. It was me just talking like we are today. I don't know if I can do that again. You're a natural. I feel you're a natural.
Oh, dynamic.
So I just want to know, what was that path? Buddy. Like, what is your secret?
Okay. I do want to say this first of all, that I think because what we think and say is so familiar to us, we run around thinking that it cannot be special to another human being. And in the same way you dialogue with the grocery clerk or me with somebody I'm coaching or a student, it's the same. It's until we see the reaction that they get from what it is that we've said, like we start to say, I guess this was valuable and helpful to somebody. And so we just need to be able to practice and expose what it is that we know. Not everything that we say and know is valuable, but to share that with strangers. I don't know any other way but to get your butt out there and do it and work on this material. Comedians do this. They arrive in small clubs with a sketchbook and they practice their content and their jokes, and the ones that hit they're like, oh, okay, and the ones that bomb they work on. And I think this is just part of us learning how to be good storytellers and to work on our timing, pacing, and to curate the stories that matter and resonate to people. All those things that you said about me were totally true, that this was and sometimes still is a very scary thing for me to do, to stand out there on a stage with a spotlight. Your brain goes into a million different directions and it's hard to be coherent and do your thing. But my coach again told me this is what I must do, that I have a talent for it, and then young people are going to want to hear what I have to say from the experiences that I've had, the stories that I can share. And so with his encouragement, I just went out there and did it. And of course it was terrible. And I'm not saying this in some kind of false humility way. It was terrible. Some people have threatened to expose those tapes of those early talks. They have. I'm like, please, if you love me, if you care about me, just destroy it, because it lives only in the memory of my mind now. And if you play it back, it will live somewhere else. So please don't. But things like my voice shaking, losing my place in the talk, like where am I in this conversation? I have no idea. And I remember one of those early talks, they sandwiched me between heavy hitters, like people I looked up to, people whose work was like just jaw-dropping gorgeous. And then they sandwiched me, and the whole time like, what am I doing here? I would have been in the seat here listening to this if they just hadn't invited me. And what am I doing? And so all that stuff, and just fumbling through it, and just like I just could not wait to get off stage. And you did poorly when people come to you to say you did great afterwards. It's like you just know, you can tell. It's like they see a wounded animal, they're like, let me wrap a bandage around that. And that's what happened. But
you should have told me that in my speech. People told me I did great. I didn't know that was meant the opposite.
That's how they say it, babe.
Oh no.
It was. But I remember going back to my coach and saying, okay, so I did that and it was terrible. And he asked me why. And, like the kind, patient person that he was, he said, so here's the thing. Never agree to do a talk that you don't feel passionate about. So if they throw a subject at you that you don't like, that you have no point of view on, or isn't part of like how you feel or think, just turn that one down. Okay. Or you tell them, this is what I talk about, and if you want to change it, then I'm happy to do your come to your conference or event, but otherwise don't do that. I say, okay, I get that. What else? He says, what you want to do is just to remember this one idea, that you want to be perfect. You have all these ideas and things that you want to share, but nobody knows that but you. So no matter how you do, you'll be great, because they have no point of comparison. It's just you on an off day is a great day for them.
Wow.
So he gave me a bunch of little tips, and each and every single time I went up, I got a little less nervous. And I think about 2.5 years into it, after doing a couple of dozen talks, I finally remember one time I was in Seattle. I'd given this talk, and I was so excited afterwards. I ran back to my hotel room. I called my wife. I'm like, honey. She goes, oh no, what happened? I was like, no, nothing bad happened. It's like, it's the first time I went on stage. I nailed it, and I wasn't even nervous. She goes, what happened? Like, what built this up? I'm like, I don't know, but I like where I'm going with this.
Wow.
Awesome. And then as I hear you talking, I hear the passion, the energy, and, I get it. You exude that. But I hear you talking about your mentor, or your coach. So is that where you get your strength from, guidance from? Because you got to reach out for help. And me, by nature, I try to do it on my own. But you limit yourself is for what I'm hearing from you. You need the outside coaching and the assistance to fast track that.
Yeah. But I think we're all hardwired differently. Some of us can figure it out, want to figure it out on our own. And I would if I didn't have somebody, just like you, Carl, I would do it. But since I had this coach, I could run many ideas by him and get his guidance. Because if somebody has been through it before, that's the beauty of coaching, right? You're going to make mistakes. You're just going to make fewer of them, and it's going to be a little less painful. And so, if you're in a position where that's available to you and it's accessible, why not go for it? And that's what I did.
No, you're right. I agree with that.
Well, speaking of coaching, something I've been, you have those like questions in your head and they just keep coming up. So this is a question. This is probably self-fulfilling a little bit, but you were patient enough. The other thing I have to say, you're the only person ever. You gave me time. You let me think. You gave me 2 years to go on your show and let me believe it was a practice. You let me do it the way I needed to do it to get there, which is so rare in life, with anything. What did you see in me, or what gave you? I don't know. How were you able to do that? How could you wait? How could you support me in what I struggling for 2 years?
There are a lot of reasons why, Kathy. First of all, I heard your story, and I knew that if more people heard your story and the way that you were able to deliver it, I think it would make a positive impact on the world. So maybe a lot of it was just really selfish. Like, I want to share you with more people, and I'm willing to wait you out. I'm willing to give you all the space, never to rush you, to give you as much like a very wide berth, so like I don't disturb your waters. Like, this is what you want to do, it's okay. And so we would exchange messages, conversations, face-to-face meetings. And I'm really glad that the very last time where you ultimately decided to do it, we're just having lunch, and the stories that you're sharing with me, I'm like, why isn't this being recorded right now? Why isn't this being broadcasted? And a little bit with my co-conspirator, Carl, helped me out a little bit. He's like, why don't you guys just, well, I don't know,
Oh,
just step into the studio and see what I'm like, yeah. And my team scrambled.
cry.
They really scrambled because it's like, Chris, what are we doing? I said, set up the mics.
Oh my
Do it
gosh. Oh my gosh.
because you're going to spook her, and just do it really fast. Make sure it's recorded and it's good, but don't worry about it being perfect, because we're going to lose this moment. And I wasn't even sure at that moment in time if you were going to do it,
I thought it
right?
was already set up.
No. I just had to, like, well, I gotta just
Oh
get
my
it up. Yeah.
gosh.
No, it's fine. It's totally fine. And you did. And I wanted to give you the control of the content. Like, if you don't like it, if you want to edit something out, we can do that. And so I think if you care about anybody in the world and you want to see them succeed, you're patient with them, you give them space, and you encourage them, and you don't pressure them. Like, I grew up with a lot of uncles and aunts, right? Because both my mom and dad had 9 or 10 brothers apiece. So there were a lot of adult supervision
Wow.
kind of floating around in this extended family. And a couple of uncles, when they're like, "Hey, you want to try this, kiddo?" And I'm like, "No." And they pretty much just force you to do it.
Uh-huh.
So as a child, like, there's not much I can do about that. But as an adult, I know I don't want to put people in uncomfortable situations. I give them space. And I'm playing a really long game. 10 years later, when we're old and missing teeth and all that stuff, I'm like, so is it time to do that podcast? And maybe like, yeah, let's do it. And I'm okay with that. It just would be with fewer teeth. That's all.
But you do understand that's rare.
I don't know.
No, it is
At
rare.
Epicurrence, you said to me, that's one speech. You've done one. What matters is where it goes from here. What are you going to do with it from here? And I had that thought in my head for those whole 2 years. And when I went to your open house, when I went to do a recording, we had these recordings, and it was to either
That's what it was.
yeah. So at first I started to say something, that smart or whatever. And then I thought, no, cut. Like, I'm going to say something else. And what I actually said, and I don't think you ever saw it, but I was crying. And what I actually said was, I said, this was one of the most valuable people in me healing after cancer, because you saw something in me I was never able to see in myself, ever. You saw value in me when I could not find any value in myself. Any. I mean, limited, but I mean, value for other people. It was like I got sick. I went through it, and I just never rebounded. I just kind of thought, I didn't know where to go from there.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you saw something valuable in me, it was overwhelming. And I don't know if you ever knew how much that meant to me, but it was a life-changing moment. When you have these different things, that change your life, that will always be something that changed my life.
Sadly, your recording, due to a technical just user error, I've never seen nor heard. But I do really, really appreciate you saying that. It really fills my heart up, because why do we exist on this planet if we can't take a moment out of our life and day to recognize, acknowledge, and appreciate people?
Absolutely. And from the caregiver side of it, I really appreciate you, because in essence, you gave her confidence back. She became her old self, or more confident self, back, and was able to start moving forward instead of being in that lull. And I try everything as a caregiver. I love her to death, but you can only do so much. And you were that missing ingredient, because after that day and talking to you and getting to know you, it just got her confidence back. It got her back on track.
That is so hard for me to believe, I have to say. I know you're sharing. I know you guys are being very genuine with me. But, after Epicurrents, I'm looking at your Instagram feed. I look at these beautiful images. I'm like, what is she talking about? You have so much to appreciate. You have so many gifts and talents, both of you, actually. And it's like, what is going on here? So this is like just a testament to, sometimes, no matter what people look like on the outside, there's a lot more that's going underneath that we just never know. So be slow to judge people. Be slow to assume that it's either going poorly or it's going well for anybody. And just take a moment in your life, in your day, to care. And that's all it is. So I don't think I'm telling you anything that the world doesn't already know. So it doesn't seem like anything, right? When I'm saying, it's like when you came up on stage and you shared your story, you shared your truth and your struggles, and you're very much in the moment. Those are powerful things, because a lot of people wait until they're way beyond the moment to share, because they know how the story turns out.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was also really special, right? It's like nobody talks about, well, I'm nearly bankrupt right now, and I'll tell you how it turns out.
No, you're right.
Recovery story.
But I think that's the moment it's the most powerful and has the most impact.
I agree.
No, I agree.
And for me, the thing after cancer was, I went into it in like a hurricane, and I just thought, you get the treatment like any other medicine. You take the medicine, you get better, and then you just get right back on that people mover of life, and you just, like, you stepped off and right back on with everyone else, and no problem. What I didn't realize is I'd fundamentally look different, be different, feel different. Those experiences were many, but in such a short period of time. And I just never accepted who I became after cancer. I couldn't accept it. I kept waiting to be who I was before, and not realizing that just because I don't look the same, just because I now have different experiences, it doesn't mean I'm less than. It could even mean I'm more than, because this is supposed to be about you, but it could even mean I'm more than, because you took all those things away from me, and I'm still able to keep going. So that's what I had to learn. And that's what you helped me with. I could not see that I had that value. I kept thinking, like, I would explain to people I met right before I met you. I'd explain to people, I'd say, I'm so sorry I look like this now. It's because I went through treatment. And this is how I ended up. But now I don't, ever since I met you, I don't say that anymore. Because now I realize I don't have to be who I was before.
Mm-hmm.
I can accept who I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be better. That could be more powerful. So anyway, I thank you deeply. Thank you very deeply. Sorry. Sorry.
Sorry, babe.
But anyway, if you ever doubted my sincerity and my thank you, I thank you so much, because that was really the kick in the pants I needed. And you were so eloquent and kind.
And had a big boot.
And you're nothing like a robot. I never saw that.
Look where we're at today. This is episode 2.
3.
You're our first guest.
You're our first guest, yes.
So again, it's like a lot of times I think that we have a grand plan for our lives, and then something weird happens and we think it has to be a grand action to get us back into that place. And I think it's just like the butterfly effect, where a little bit of change, it's a trigger point, and other things happen. Our conversation at Epicurrents triggered something. A year or 2 years later, we're still talking. We're having lunch. That triggers something. And in that moment, you decide to go to the studio. We do something, and then that begins something else. And then next thing I know, you guys are going hot crazy, buying all this gear, and making content. So this is, who knows where this is gonna go. I know you have this big giant dream too of traveling. Is it to Sweden?
Norway,
to tell that story. So I think this is all just practice. See, like I have this thought, right? I think is it Shakespeare is like all the world's a stage and we're all but mere actors in this stage. Mm-hmm. And I think every single day people show up and they think this is opening night, and I have to nail this performance. The press is here, my peers, my family, the paying audience, the public are here. And that puts a lot of pressure on you to do well. My feeling is life is, if it's all a stage and we're actors, then everything is just a stage rehearsal. It's getting us ready for the next thing. Next thing tomorrow.
I agree with that. I have a quote like that on my Instagram. It's actually from Calvin and Hobbes. It says something like, if all the world's a stage and we're all just actors, everybody's ad-libbing.
So the great literary mind of the country. Yes, it's the same concept, right?
It is.
So what your next adventure is, and that awaits you as long as you keep saying yes to yourself
and accepting these changes.
That's a biggie, honey.
For me, that's my barrier in life.
Yes, but we're getting there. You're getting there.
So back to you. This is about you. It actually is, because I got
Sensei.
emotional because I appreciate you so much. You've accomplished a lot. What is there out there that you want to accomplish in the future?
Okay, now this is a big one. Your show should be called No Easy Questions. We're not like playing around here. The thing that I think that will drive me until I'm too old and able to do so is I'm really passionate about education, and not just design education or business education for creatives, but just education, period. That we have a system that's very antiquated, that's inefficient, and needs re-examining. And this is true from like pre-K all the way through, I think, through college,
Mhm.
through they probably have it figured out at grad school, I think, but it's something we need to re-examine. We need to kind of think about how people learn, that there are different types of people, different learning modalities, and we need to leverage all that we've discovered in science, psychology, learning behavior, sociology, and technology, and put all those things together to create something where, whether you're the poorest of the poor, the richest of the rich, we have equal access to the same quality education, because I believe that's how we move forward as a society. And so that's what really drives me. And we have so far to go. We've barely scratched the first layer of a multi-layer problem. And we're experimenting, we're making things, we're breaking things, we're succeeding and we're failing, and we're iterating really rapidly until we can find that perfect hybrid where somebody from thousands of miles away can feel like they're in the same room with you, getting, if not the same or better quality of education that they could get in a traditional brick and mortar school.
That's very interesting. And do you think the times we're in right now, where everybody's getting schooled at home, that this change is going to begin and this is going to have an impact to start making that change? Paradigm shift.
Yes, it depends on how long this lasts, Carl. But at least right now, for until summer, I think for most people in school, they're going to adjust to our reality, because we've been doing this for years, right? So they're
Mm-hmm.
gonna get a taste of like the efficiencies, the challenges, and the joy of just trying new things and teaching in new ways that they couldn't do before. So every problem is an opportunity in disguise. So we can't talk to each other face to face. So we'll adapt. We'll make use of the tools we have, and we'll invent new ones. If this lasts even longer, then it may actually accelerate the adoption of distance-based learning, asynchronous learning, all these kinds of things, and that would make me really, really happy.
And what role do you see yourself or would you like to play in this?
You know, there was I forget his name now, but he was a founder of an electric car company where you don't buy the car, you just buy miles. And
Mm.
he says, "I'm not in this to build cars. I'm here to end cars. You don't understand the mission." So it's like, if the mission is accomplished without me, I'm happy. You know, my kids, my grandkids at some point, and their children after them will have inherited a very new and radical, more efficient way of learning, and this will be to the betterment of humankind. So if I'm a part of it, fantastic. If I'm not a part of it, it's fine. It just needs to happen. And so it probably is a multi-generational goal. It took us a long time to get here. It'll probably take a long time to get us out of here. So I hope that I'm successful enough to have started the conversation and created enough models where people can then take and build upon.
Wow. I'm inspired by that, and I didn't realize that. And it's like a new beginning, and there's so much more to do, and that's very interesting to hear. That's a great goal.
Well, and the name of the future is completely appropriate for that. I don't know if you came up with that, but great job.
Very good.
And where can people find you online?
They can find the future at thefutur.com. The future spelt without an E. We remind people, if you just drop the E goes, it's gone. So the future. And you can also find me on social, on pretty much every platform, on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at the Chris Doe, and Doe spelled D-O.
Okay.
All right. Well, it was very nice talking to you. You are my sensei. I don't know about Kathy's, but
He's my hero.
you're an inspiration, and we couldn't have had a better first guest. You're kind of the reason why all this got even started. So we appreciate you taking the time and being our first guest.
Agreed.
Thank you very much for having me. It was my pleasure, and I'm just thrilled beyond belief that you're actually doing this. And so I'm super thrilled to be number one.
You're number one to us.
Always.
All right.